couple days ago. But I want to make it a weekly thing. So hopefully we'll get some more, people on here that can, ask questions and share their experiences, and we can kind of learn from each other.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's your story?
My story is I've been doing the whole, the whole go through everybody talks about of, the rich dad, poor dad, and the YouTube videos and meetups and networking, but I haven't done a deal yet. And right now, my day-to-day job, my 9 to 5, I'm working with a general contractor. So we're basically doing flip-like stuff, with kitchens, bathrooms, but we're just not doing the actual flips ourselves. We're not wholesaling. We're not doing any of that. So I'm trying to break into that transactional side. And
You're actually, all right. So the contractor that you're working with, they are working with investors that are actually flipping the properties then?
We've basically worked with everyone. We've worked with other people that are doing their flips. We've worked with other contractors that are doing big jobs. We've worked for government facilities. We've worked with, you name it. We've basically done everything. Colleges. We've been in jails doing work. It's pretty crazy.
Okay.
But the problem is working with the customers, right? Everyone wants to complain about colors and vanities, and you know what I mean? I feel like it would be much easier just to facilitate like our own flips and worry about just doing stuff that we know works, that everyone's gonna like, grays and whites, and just we know the construction side of it. It's just getting through the transactional side and understanding the paperwork and the hard money loans and stuff like that.
Okay. So what is stopping you? Like what do you think is like the biggest or your number one obstacle like right now from like getting a deal for yourself and you guys flipping it, doing the work and flipping it yourself?
It's funny how everyone comes up with all these different problems that they see when in reality, I think it's just self-doubt that's holding me back. It's just every problem I can think of, I immediately think of a solution, and it just boils down to actually making the phone call or the email or just sitting down and dedicating myself to a simple task that I know there's no real downside. It's either a yes or a no, and if it's a no, move on and try to get a yes. I think it's pretty simple. It's just a mental barrier to break through.
Right.
And how many no's is it, Rob, before you get that yes? Right?
A lot, yeah,
for a lot, right?
That's the hard part, is like that's why I think you see so many people like do this and then quit, is because a lot of people want to have success like immediately, right? And then like it takes some persistence to get there. But I think but this market now is like there's deals like everywhere. So the problem like 6 months ago was like really hard to find a deal, right? And now there's deals everywhere. You just got to be, pretty careful about your numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So have you come across a deal that you wanted to take down yourself and like talked yourself out of it for some reason?
Well, just driving around the town. I live in Manteca, California, and I've seen pretty much most of California, and I see opportunity everywhere. I always see distressed houses. You hear about stuff. Being as a general contractor, not myself, but working with one, you come across people that, I just inherited the house, so I want to get rid of it, and you try to structure some kind of a deal, but you never really get the negotiation down because everyone wants top dollar, and it's hard to justify, this house needs a lot of work. At the end of the day, I can't pay full price. And a lot of people just, they can't break with that. They can't bear the reality.
Right. Yeah. That definitely is a challenge right now. There's a huge disconnect with what sellers are wanting and what realistically their place is worth.
Yeah, big time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no,
I just let my 1031 exchange lapse because I couldn't find a buyer that was being realistic on pricing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd rather pay the government, basically I'd rather pay the government 50 grand than overpay on a purchase by 750,000. And that's kind of the spreads I was looking at.
Yeah. 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 It's tough right now. So
Well, yeah, and people talk about, you can always refinance a different interest rate, but you can't refinance the 50K you pay over the asking,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
So,
I've seen that post going around last day or so.
so
Yeah.
what's your guys' story? See, we
Well,
got some other people in here.
Yeah, let me just say welcome to Jose and Dustin and Drew. Good to see you again.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey.
Marv. So yeah, so just a quick intro here. So I want to try to get this going like once a week and make it like a consistent thing where people can bring questions and share stories and bounce ideas off of each other and stuff like that. So I'm going to be posting this regularly now, and hopefully we can get together and grow this group and be able to share experiences and hopefully put some deals together as well. So I just want to make it as a forum where people can come and bring questions, and if I don't have the answer for something, maybe somebody else does, and I'm just sharing crazy stories and things not to do, because I have learned a lot of things not to do, what not to do. And if I can help somebody not make those same mistakes, that would I feel like I'd be giving back, especially since so many people have kind of helped me out along the way as well. So so why don't we just go around, do a quick intro for everybody that's like actually not just listening. So I'll start. My name's Rob. So I'm wholesaling up here in Seattle, but I own investment properties in Seattle area, Oklahoma, Indiana, short-term rentals, long-term rentals. I've done creative finance, sub-2, seller finance, deals. So I've done a lot of stuff, doing a lot of wholesaling here in Seattle, and now I'm coming across enough deals where I'm like, that buyers aren't buying, and I'm looking at like wanting to start taking stuff down for myself again at this point, either to flip or to turn into rentals or whatever. So I've been doing real estate for about 11 years now. Started doing flips and then got into wholesaling as a way to find deals for myself, because I saw what the wholesalers were making on them, and I was like, dang, if I could have found that deal at that price, like that would have been like an amazing deal. Got into wholesaling, then realized it wasn't as easy as like all the gurus made it look, and maybe those wholesalers are actually earning their fees after all for finding these deals. So so this was all a side hustle. I was a software developer up till a couple years ago, and then made the full-time jump into just wholesaling and investing full-time early last year. So that's kind of where I'm at. So anyway, let's go around here. I'll pick on Nick next, since he's out for a hike or something right now.
We're walking the dog. Walking the dog. I don't know if you can see her.
That's blurry.
Black lab.
Yeah,
it's got the filters on, so it won't do it, but whatever. So I'm also in Seattle. Rob and I see each other maybe on a monthly basis or so. I have just sold a 13-unit apartment building in Washington State here. I have 26 doors left in 5 states, including short-term, an Airbnb down in Arizona, in Scottsdale, Arizona, a real nice place. I have an adult family home that I'm the landlord only on. And I'm looking to get into more adult family homes, because those things just cash flow like crazy. But the floor plan is pretty precise, and in Washington State, you have to have be pretty long in the tooth to stabilize those. It's probably a year of just carrying it while you get licensing with the state. So, it's nothing that you can just drop and go at. Other states are a little bit faster, I'm told, but I don't live in those states, so I have to build more teams out. But so just like what Rob was saying, I'm actually thinking of going to looking at one of your places this afternoon, Rob. Let's go look at the one in Edmonds.
Yeah, we got a
Chloe,
Yeah.
Chloe told me where the key was, so
Okay. All right, perfect.
I'm good to just drop in.
Yep. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, what else? As a W-2, I actually am an intensive care unit nurse, which is the weirdest thing. You know, most people that know me as an investor just don't see me as a nurse. So I'm only working the minimum amount of hours I have to work it in order to get healthcare benefits. And I want to keep my skills in the game in the healthcare side, because I do intend to do some, relief work, third world outreach with my real estate portfolio funding the way. So
That's awesome.
that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Cool. Let's see. Jose, are you there? Might just be listening. How about you, Garrett?
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. If you didn't hear already, I'm just getting into this wholesaling thing. I've been as a W-2 in hands-on construction every day, working with general contractors. So basically handling full remodels, guts. I mean, literally everything from framing, drywall, paint, flooring, interior, exterior. We do everything. And now I'm trying to break into the wholesale, fix and flip, and hopefully start accumulating rentals along the way. Hopefully work my way up to some larger multifamily properties in game. So that's my story.
Cool. Oh, and where are you? So you're down in California?
Correct. Yeah, California.
Okay. So Nick and I are both in the Seattle area.
Where in California again? What's the town?
Manteca. It's kind of central.
Yeah. Okay.
Small little town, but a lot of distressed houses.
You guys just service Manteca only, or?
No, we've been working in the Bay Area, a couple hours south, down in Turlock, Fresno. I mean, we've been up to Sacramento.
Wow. Okay.
I mean,
You go all over the Bay.
yeah, we pretty much all of Central California.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I see the prices on houses in Cupertino there, and I don't understand.
It's pretty wild.
It's
In the
wild.
Bay Area.
Yeah.
I'm sure Washington isn't much different.
It's getting there, but it's still different. Like you can't get a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,000 square foot Cracker Jack house for $3 million up here yet.
Yeah. All right. Actually, this is going to take a while to go through everybody. Why don't we just open it up for questions at this point? And if somebody has a question, then they can introduce themselves and say where they're from and they're doing stuff. So, hey, Eugene, saw you just hopped on. Dustin, how's it going? All right. So does anybody have any questions or deals they want to talk about, or stories about deals where something isn't going well, or wins or something like that? Let's just open it up and see what people have got.
Hey Rob, I got a question.
Yeah.
As I'm just picking up the wholesale thing myself, I'm up here in Ferndale, just north of Bellingham, and I traditionally buy foreclosure properties with Vestas and East Side and do that whole spiel. Been doing pretty good over the last 3 years, but wanted to start doing wholesale. And I know some of the way that we are able to source leads fare better in certain areas than others. What ways are you finding is the best way to source leads? Is it direct mail, cold calling, driving for dollars, blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, so everybody, I feel like, kind of swears by whatever marketing it is that they're doing, and I don't necessarily think that there's a best or even better way. I think what it's going to come down to is like consistency. One is going to be consistency, and then the other is going to be the type of data that you're pulling, right? So for example, if you're pulling stuff from PropStream or batch leads or something like that, it's like everybody was hitting those lists like, a few months back. I don't know, maybe it's kind of slowed down a bit since then. But if you're able to find sources of data that aren't as easily accessible to people, I think that's where the gold is going to be. And so like things like water shut off lists, utility shut off lists, something like that, where you can't just like go and to a website and click and download it, I think is going to be where it's at. And then as far as the outreach, then that's kind of up to you. It's like whatever. I feel like you need to do like whatever is most suited to your personality as far as marketing goes, right? Because that's going to make it easier for you to stick with it, even though things might be going slow, right? So like if you would rather answer inbound calls, you know, and talk to people that want to talk to you, like through because of direct mail or something like that, that's probably going to be better for you than if doing cold calling, even though you might hate cold calling, right? So for me personally, I do a lot of just networking with other agents and wholesalers, like, and trying to find deals that way, and investors, just basically looking for referrals and stuff like that. I was doing cold calling for a while, but I wasn't really investing the time or the money into trying to get data that was different. I was just pulling prop stream lists, and I had some mixed success with that. So I think it's really gonna come up to just being consistent and then just doing whatever it is that you feel like is going to be best suited to your personality, and kind of sticking with it. I think it's definitely going to be harder now, just because there's a perfect post on Facebook right now about like buyers are acting like it's 2008 and sellers are still acting like it's 2021, right? So there's like this huge disconnect between what the sellers think they can get for their house and what buyers now are willing to pay for it. And it's like so freaking frustrating right now, because like in a lot of cases, like these sellers are just so far detached from reality on what their place is actually worth in this market. So yeah, so did that answer your question?
Yeah, Rob, that was perfect. I mean, is there, to add on to that disparity between what's happening in the market and what the sellers are looking to acquire or achieve with their stuff, is there a way that you approach that's specific to helping educate people on, you know, where we're at and where we're going, and how to help bring them to reality without, you know, being rude about it, I guess?
Yeah, I'll just try to run through the numbers with them, you know, because like I had this conversation with the seller where they were like, oh, well, I'm offering 100K below the market value. So that gives you like plenty of room to make a profit. There's 100K of profit there, right? And I was like, well, no, because, okay, maybe the work costs 60, but that doesn't mean we're going to make a 40K profit on it, right? We still got to pay realtor costs, agent commissions, transaction taxes, like all of this stuff, which they don't like show you on HDTV, right? They just show the sale price, the rehab, and the purchase price. And like, oh my God, you're making all this money. So I try to like walk through some of those. I don't get like super detailed into those numbers, but I try to educate them that there's other costs associated with, you know, buying and rehabbing the house. And then you got the financing costs. So first is walking them through that, and then trying to pull comps, you know, and showing them like, hey, this is what's either been, because they might say, oh, this house is for sale for 500K, so I should be getting close to that. And they're like, well, no, it's been on the market for 90 days and it's also 1,000 square feet bigger and remodeled, and like, you know, so trying to like educate them as far as, okay, here's what realistically has sold, you know, and so putting some comps together for them as far as that goes. But I know it's a struggle because like other wholesalers or agents could be talking to them and saying, no, we can probably get you closer to what you want, right? And then that makes it harder for you if you're trying to like have a realistic conversation with them and they are, you know, somebody else is giving them unrealistic expectations. But I think just kind of educating them and walking through the process could go a long way with that.
Do you find that it's okay for you to renegotiate or retrade or things like getting it under contract if they're almost there but not quite there, and then after the inspection period or stuff and coming back and trying to, is that okay? Does that work well, or is that just too much trouble? Does that get does that get ugly sometimes? Because I'm like, oh, you said this and now it's this.
Yeah, no, I definitely, if I think it's going to be a tough sell at whatever price and they're like not budging at all on it, I'll just be honest and I'll be like, okay, like, I don't know if I work with any investors that this number would work for them, but if you're open to at least trying, we could give it a shot and see what the feedback is. But I can't make any promises that we're actually going to be able to get this thing closed at this price. And then at least if they agree to that, you could get people through there. And if the numbers are just not going to work, at least then you might have some data points that you could take back to the seller and say, okay, well, we had like 4 investors walk this thing, and we would need to be like 50K lower just because everybody's coming back and saying, the resale value isn't what you think it's going to be, or the rehab is going to be more. And the rehab is probably the biggest sticking point with the sellers, because you say the sellers say, oh no, it needs 25K work, right? And then you go in there and it's like a hoarder house and sort of thing. Or even if it's not that extreme, it's like the sellers always underestimate how much something's going to cost to fix it up, right? So, but then if you have actual investors that go through and say, no, we run the numbers, here's what things are going to cost, that like gives you another more further evidence for the seller to kind of reset their expectations on why the price needs to be where it is, and then it just depends too on like, are they actually motivated to sell? Like, do they need to sell, or is it just like they want to sell and they'll kind of hold out until they get their price, right? And so the people that need to sell are like the ones definitely to be focusing like the most energy on, right? Like, especially now in this market where it's like there's a ton of deals out there, whereas previously if somebody just wanted to sell, like, yeah, maybe you could get a buyer that would pay whatever it is that they wanted, given the scarcity of deals at the time. So
Well, thank you very much. I'll pass it to somebody else. Thanks.
yep. What you been up to, Drew?
What's going on, guys? You hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, just a little intro about me. I don't know if I did a little intro last time.
Go ahead.
But so what I do is I do primarily digital marketing. Within the digital space, I do it for my wife's business. My wife does nurse delegation. I do it for an e-commerce business and for a short-term rental. I own a short-term rental and property up in Linwood. That's like just a tenant, solid tenant. Zero cash flow right now on that one because I had to do a refinance. So that kind of it didn't put me under, but I mean, it's at least I have a tenant paying the mortgage.
So that's a short-term rental, or that's a regular rental?
No, so the one in Linwood, it's built around Costco, the new Costco over there.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I purchased that in 2015. Then
Okay.
moved out of there and then had a tenant in there ever since 2017. But I'm not flowing on that property. So but I've been doing a lot of research on wholesaling because my wife purchased a duplex, and this was like last year from a wholesaler. And that's the first time I heard about it. She was like, oh yeah, we purchased this property from a wholesaler. He drives a Porsche. And all I heard was wholesaler and Porsche. So that kind of sparked my interest. But the reason why now I'm kind of more into doing this whole wholesaling thing is pretty much for buying, holding for to build our portfolio. The problem is my wife has strict requirements.
Uh-huh.
I want to buy within like certain like areas. Like I kind of like the North End. I'm from the North End.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to do a few short-term rentals up here too, like cabin style. I mean, I've never done it, but I heard that's a pretty hard gig to do. But yeah, I mean, I had a few questions like with this market going on right now, I know it's a perfect time to buy because there's less competition out. But my kind of strategy is right now is to buy a solid like buyers list, like millionaires that just act, no tire kickers. And so what's your experience like? How big is your buyers list? Is it like 20, 30, or do you keep it under like 5?
So our buyers list is pretty big.
Okay.
But I would say there's like a core group of buyers, right? That are actually doing most of the buying. But I mean, so we have like thousands on our mail list that get blasted, when we have a deal go out. But yeah, kind of like you're saying, is the challenge is finding out who those real buyers actually are, and who is really buying right now, and who's just kind of a tire kicker. And so what we've been focusing a lot on is like talking to the buyers and figuring out like, okay, what are you buying right now? If you are buying right now, what is it exactly that you're looking for? Like, what does the buy box look like? Because now that because in a buyer's market now, so in a seller's market that we had, right, the deals were hard to come by, but the buyers, there's a ton of buyers, right? So the challenge was finding the deals, right? Now it's completely reversed. The deals are easier to find, but the buyers are harder to find. So now we're shifting to like focusing on finding those buyers. So I would say, and this is all a relationship business, right? So it's like a matter of like getting on the phone, talking to these people, because people want to do deals with people that they like. So,
Yeah.
if you can find somebody that's still buying like, a deal a month at least, or multiple deals a month is even better. That's somebody that you want to like make sure you're in contact with pretty frequently, checking in on, seeing how it's going, what they're looking for, how their projects are doing. So I think it's definitely worthwhile to spend, time, when you're talking to people and looking for buyers, like really trying to establish a relationship there and not make it as, just like a transactional thing. So kind of what are you doing right now as far as finding buyers or trying to find buyers, and what does that process look like?
So my approach right now is like I'm downtown Seattle. If I see anyone that looks like they got money, I approach them. I know it's not the good way. I give them my card, but my next plan is to run ads.
Okay.
And so I've been working on a big campaign for this. I'm still saving up for the budgeting. I'm going to do like a 90-day period to see what my results are. And then after that, I was going to do some bandit signs. It's going to be some crazy looking bandit signs in areas that are high traffic. So I'm going to be prepared for fines, but that's kind of like my strategy for getting these solid buyers, because if I have a buyer, it's pretty much easy to get a deal, right?
Yeah, it's just a matter of finding whatever that buyer is looking for specifically, right? So the other thing too, right now, this is the other challenge with buyers, is not only are there fewer of them, but I think their criteria has become much more focused, right? They're looking for very specific deals now because they're just seeing so many deals. They're kind of having to figure out, okay, how do I separate what's going to be in my wheelhouse versus what's something that would be a nice to have, So yeah, really getting those criteria dialed in from each one of those buyers that you're reaching out to. So yeah, I think bandit signs are great because then you get people reaching out to you directly. And if somebody in this market is like actually picking up the phone and calling you because of a bandit sign, that they see, like they're probably going to be pretty serious about wanting to find a deal. So that qualify that it's either going to be a buyer or potentially other wholesalers reaching out to you, asking you if you have deals. So that's probably going to be the one or two.
Have you worked with the wholesaler? Like for example, you have a property and then the other wholesaler has a buyer. Have you done any transactions like that?
Oh yeah, like I love doing those deals. Like those are actually like our bread and butter, where we're partnering with another wholesaler on a deal
How would that work out though? Like, is there a separate contract between each wholesaler?
So the way that we typically do it is it depends on if we're the ones that have it under contract or the other wholesaler is. So if the other wholesaler has it under contract, we'll have a joint venture agreement, which basically says, they'll give us permission to market the property, for them. And then if we find a buyer, then we'll, split the fee, whatever the fee is on the property. So logistically, how that works is, we'll blast it out and let's say we find a buyer that's interested in buying it. That wholesaler will basically assign the property to us for, some amount, whatever their share of the fee is going to be, and then we'll assign it to the end buyer then at that point. So basically there ends up being 2 assignments and a purchase and sale agreement that we then send to title, and then they figure out how to divide up all the funds at closing. So it's a very easy process, doing deals with other wholesalers. Where it gets messy is like if other wholesalers insert themselves into that process and you don't necessarily know, so the whole daisy chaining thing where somebody markets somebody else's deal but doesn't tell them, and then that that deal gets sent out by another wholesaler, and then you end up having like 4 or 5 wholesalers in the chain.
Yeah.
Things can get a little cumbersome, if that goes on, but we always try to make sure that we're just basically working with whoever has it under contract, because I'm all about getting deals sold. Like if some other wholesaler, as long as somebody gives me a heads up that they've got buyers and they want to send this deal to their buyer, I'm totally cool with that. Because at the end of the day, the whole goal is just to get this property sold for this seller, right? What I don't like is when I start seeing an email blast and somebody sends me my deal back to me and it's marked up like $20K, and they ask me if I want to go see it, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, can I schedule a showing? Yeah.
You view every property physically, right? Like you take pictures.
I don't.
Videos. Oh, you
no,
don't?
I don't. Yeah. So here's the thing, okay, so if I'm going under, if I'm direct to seller on the deal, I'll either go out or I'll send somebody out to go check it out. Right. If it's another wholesaler that we're partnering with, I won't go out there. And I also don't go out to see deals direct to seller if we're not even can't agree on a price. I don't, because it's a 2 or 3 hour thing to go drive out to Everett, go walk it, have a conversation with the seller, and then find out they're not motivated at all. Right. And then there goes half my day. So if we can't even agree on a price, I won't go out and take a look at it. And sometimes the seller will say, oh, well, I'm not going to give you a price until you need to see the property first, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't want to waste your time, and I don't waste my time, my contractors, and sending all these people out to go see this thing. And then, we're $200K apart on price. So if we can't even agree on that, let's, and usually that works. So most of them understand.
Do you have a website with updated properties?
I do. So we're using InvestorLift to host our properties. I don't know if you're familiar with that website or not. A lot of wholesalers are using it now.
So what's the fine line between being a wholesaler and being a broker? Because for example, if I find a property I put under contract and I run ads for it to the public, would that be considered operating as a broker without a license?
Okay, so say that again.
Property. So I would find a property and put under contract, right?
Mm.
And then with the photos and with the videos, I would market that to the public digitally and maybe direct mailing.
Mm-hmm.
Would I be acting as a broker without a license?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, it is definitely a fine line, so you have to be careful. So what you are basically, so first of all, you're not representing the seller, and you need to be clear with the seller about that, right? So you're not representing them as a on their behalf in this transaction. You're representing yourself. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is you're not marketing the property itself. You're marketing the equitable interest in the property.
Mhm.
So so that needs to be clear as well. So
I mean, if there's fine print, I mean, if people don't want to read the fine print, it isn't legally that's their fault for not reading.
it is, but at the same time, like, you don't want them to lawyer up and
I understand that now. Okay.
yeah. So I mean, but I haven't had any issues with that too. And I'm always clear with the sellers, like I might not be the end buyer either, right?
Yeah, I mean, I see your posts, but it's just words. I'm talking about having words with pictures, with music, like the full campaign advertisement shebang.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I can put the fine print in there also, but then again, I don't want to have any legal trouble.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, there's a number of the kind of the gurus out there that have, wholesale contracts that they make available for free and are good to use because they got all the disclaimers and stuff in there.
And then, what was your
I
experience
do.
with Astro?
And oops, sorry about that. What was that?
Oh, I thought you mentioned that you did the Astro program.
Yeah, I'm in Jamil's Astro.
How's that going?
I have got more than my money back out of that I had put into it. So I would recommend it. So like if you are, and I feel like you are, so like if you are ready to like take action and like actually start doing stuff, I think like getting into one of these mentorship programs is awesome because it's going to cut down learning time for you. You're going to see the other mistakes that people have made. They're going to have a blueprint. So you basically need to find like a mentorship program that like really resonates with what it is that you want to be doing. Right. And it happened that Jamil Danview's program for me, at least, was that. And now I'm in Ryan Zolan's, who's kind of one of the first students of them. So, and then it also like gives you a community where you can like post questions and bounce ideas off and stuff like that. So I would highly recommend getting into some group.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, I want to do it, but it's just a mindset thing because I got burned already.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna say who it is or like market any negative reviews, but like it's kind of getting over the fact that I just got burned, and this was like a couple months ago. But I listened to Jamil's podcast, and
Mhm.
they sound very promising. But then again, he's selling his program, so
Yeah. So no, I've had a very good experience with it. The thing now though that was different than when I joined is when I joined, there was, I don't know, less than 50 people in the group, and the coaching calls had maybe 15 people on them, right? So every week I was on the coaching calls. I was able to ask questions, talk to Josiah, who's the CEO of the company, right? He was hosting the calls at the time.
Keegley guy.
Yeah, Keegley, one of the Keegley founders, Josiah Grimes. And so that was awesome. But now there's like, I don't know, 400 people on the coaching calls, and they go for hours. And so the value might not be as good as it used to be. I mean, that's my biggest complaint about it now is like, I would get on the coaching call and like people were asking like what an assignment contract was. Right. And I'm like, how long do I have to sit this before I can get my question answered? So,
yeah, I got one more quick question. I don't want to take up too much time though.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
Do you deal with foreign or out of country investors? Because they got some money, like Chinese investors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. So I haven't had a personal experience with like any investors from China, but I worked with an investor from Israel. There was actually a number of investors from Israel who were buying deals in Oklahoma City. So yeah, for sure. If If you can
Is there-
find anybody overseas that
Is
like
there
is
anything special with them, like anything in the contract that you got to state?
No, I would just make sure that like the earnest money requirements are pretty high, especially in this market. We're wanting to do a minimum of 20K.
Uh-huh.
I had an investor back out on a deal a few months ago that I had a 10K earnest money deposit from him, and he was like, keep it. I don't care. You can have it. So obviously that wasn't a high enough incentive for him to close on this deal that he had signed up for. So
What title company are you? Do you work with just one title company, or is it just who you take?
yeah, so I
How do
was
you do?
pretty much using Capital Title. They just got acquired by Aegis Land Title, and I might be looking for a new title company because now they are requiring you to give the seller an extra document which states that you're assigning the deal, even if your contract already says that it's assignable.
Okay.
And I don't like feel warm and fuzzy about that.
Well, I should invest time in finding a good title group.
Yeah, Capital Title was like awesome. They were like super wholesale friendly, amazing to work with, and now they've kind of changed things up a bit. So I might be shopping for a new title company to send our deals to.
Well, thanks for your answers, man. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. I'm glad you were able to hop on again. Let's see here. I'm just going through the Facebook Live thing because I'm streaming this Zoom call on Facebook as well. So Rebecca has a question. How do I get started? And do I have a mentorship program? I know of anybody here in Seattle that does. So I got started in real estate. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think that's like, I hate cliches. That's like the typical real estate cliche. I feel like everybody starts by reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, but then I didn't do anything for 10 years. And because I thought I had to like save up 20% down and that was going to take forever here in Seattle, and then buy a rental and then save another 20%. But then I discovered hard money. I started buying properties at the foreclosure auction back in 2011, 2012. And then I started buying deals from wholesalers and saw what they were making. So I bought a few duplexes in Tacoma. I flipped one and then I bird two of them. And then I started to try to find some deals myself, but it was a lot of hard work. And I was like, okay, maybe these wholesalers are earning their like money after all. Okay, so Natalie's asking if there's a Zoom link for this. Yeah, there is. Go to my Facebook page and see if you can find a link to the event. Because I created a Facebook event, and that Facebook event should have a Zoom link in it. So anyway, and then so I did a bunch of BRRRR deals, and then but stuff here doesn't cash flow very well, so I actually started looking at out-of-state markets in the Midwest, Oklahoma City and Indianapolis, and then I started buying deals there because stuff cash flows there way better because I got like a $500 a month mortgage on a property, but it rents for $1,100 a month, right? And then so I actually got into wholesaling there because I wanted to start finding my own deals in Oklahoma City. And then I started getting more into wholesaling because I was finding more deals than I wanted to keep. And then they changed the laws in Oklahoma, so you have to be licensed there now to wholesale. So I started wholesaling here in Seattle because I live actually downtown. So yeah, we did about 20, a little over 20 wholesale deals last year, and then this year, through the first half of the year, we were on pace to it's crazy. We're on pace to do like 60, and that has like slowed dramatically down since July. So we're probably just closed a little over what we did last year. And then I've acquired a few more rentals in Oklahoma. And I'm looking at potentially getting into some different asset classes. I'm looking at some mobile home parks right now, self-storage, and small multifamily. So right now, the largest units I own are duplexes. So I would like to get into something, 10 plus units. So I don't have a mentorship program, at least not yet, but I'm going to be hosting these calls so you could hop on and ask questions. I know Thatch has a mentorship program here in Seattle. If you do a search for, I think it's called Springboard to Wealth. He's got a pretty big following. Actually, I just saw he was on Instagram live just before this call. Let me post let me see if I can find the Zoom link here. I am going to post it in Facebook here. You can give this a try and see if it will let you join on Zoom. All right. So yeah, if you have any questions and you're on Zoom, just feel free to speak up. If you got questions and you're like on Facebook or YouTube, just go ahead and post it in the chat, and I will try to keep my eye on those messages that are coming in. Okay, it looks like Anne says Springboard to Wealth is super awesome. So you must be in it, I'm guessing. How long have you been doing it for? I've actually worked with a number of wholesalers who have been part of that, and helped them find buyers for their deals. They've been talking like to a seller, for example, and so I've helped them like run their numbers to figure out where they need to be as far as price goes, and then helped them been able to dispo that. So I think I've done probably like 2 or 3 people now. Help them do their first deal that are in the Springboard program, and they were just like so super excited to get a check for like $15K after going through all the training and then actually talking to seller and getting something locked up. So that's awesome. Okay, so 8 months. Have you done a deal yet, Anne? So Michelle's asking how to get started in wholesaling. So that is a good question. So what would I do if I was just starting out? As far as finding deals go, I would actually start by contacting agents, finding out what deals they have either on the market that have been sitting there for a while that need some work, because those sellers might be motivated to sell if they, have been on the market for 60 days, 90 days, and they haven't sold it yet, especially if they've done multiple price reductions. So I think the MLS right now is like an awesome place to find motivated sellers because they're just sitting right there. So just calling the listing agent up, having a conversation with them and seeing how open they might be to taking an offer below the list price. And then just calling agents anyway to say, okay, even if you don't have anything on the market, like, do you have anything coming up that, is going to need some work? That I could take a look at, because agents are getting referred deals all the time that they might not want to list because of the condition. Maybe they specialize in luxury listings and somebody sends them a hoarder house, and then so that's not something that they want, to be associated with if they were to list it. So they're wanting to sell it off market, or maybe they got a deal that's from an inheritance and the heirs just want to get rid of it and just want a quick sale. So I think agents are a great way to go about getting started and trying to find deals. Let's see. Eton, am I saying that right? So So Ita is asking about has buyers but trouble finding deals in the Seattle area. So what's a good strategy? So I would say finding out exactly what those buyers buy box looks like, what they're looking for exactly. And then yeah, finding the deals at a price that works is going to be the challenging part, right? So and you're saying you put in offers basically using the 70% form and getting laughed at. Yeah, that's happening to me too. It's super frustrating right now because so many sellers, like I'm coming up with that number, I'm running my numbers, the seller's at 500 and it's a deal at like 400, and so having a conversation with the listing agent about why you're 100K below the list price is difficult, and you either get laughed at or told, F off or whatever. But I have a really good example of a recent deal that I didn't get, where I didn't even submit an offer because the listing agent was just basically like said, don't even bother, right? So they were listed originally at 425 and they said in the listing the seller was super motivated, and I looked at it and I was like, well, I need to be like around 300 on this. And talked to the agent. They had dropped the price to 400, so they were showing that they were motivated. And I said, okay, well, let's submit an offer. And they're like, oh, don't even bother, we're not looking at anything under 350, right? So the agent I was working with on my behalf was like, yeah, let's just not waste our time, they're not even gonna look at anything below 350. So needless to say, I was like, okay, well, let's just keep our eye on it, and in a couple of weeks, if it's still available, like then we'll let's just send them an offer. I'll check in a couple of weeks later and I see the property sold for 305, and I'm like, oh my god, you're kidding me. Like, it was listed at 400, I said I needed to be around 300 and ended up selling for 305. So there was a situation where, because of I think I've started becoming a bit gun shy because I'm like getting laughed at by all these agents that are saying, yeah, that's not going to work, submitting an offer that low. And here's a perfect example of like, I possibly could have got this deal for 305 if I had, submitted an offer a couple weeks earlier, because clearly the seller ended up being very motivated. So I'd say don't get discouraged. Keep following up. Yep, exactly. That's what you got to do. Doing the dual agency thing is like a really good strategy too. I agree with that. That can sweeten the deal for sure. So you're basically offering dual agency means you put your offer in and you can if the listing agent is open to it, you can let them represent you, and that way they're getting both sides of the commission. So they could take that additional 2.5% or 3% that they're getting and either keep it for themselves and earn more money on the deal, or they could credit it back to the buyer, and it makes the offer look a little bit better because they're getting a 3% bump in whatever the offer is. So Anna's asking, what's the general rule of thumb to come up with the purchase price? So like, if we're just like trying to like submit offers as quickly as possible, on MLS deals to try to lock those up, right now deals are selling just very, very, very rough ballpark at about 60% of ARV. So if I'm just going through and I just want to go through as many MLS deals as possible, and I'll just kind of use that as my starting point. So I can sell it at 60. So I could probably be at 50, start at 50% of ARV on a deal. And then if it's obviously like a complete, like to the studs remodel sort of thing, I might have to go even less than that. And it's an uncomfortable offer to submit for sure. So yeah, the key is in the follow-up though. So even if they say no the first time, then it doesn't hurt to come back in a couple of weeks and see if it's an on-market deal, see if it's still on the market. If it's not on the market, just find out if anything with their situation has changed. So Ann is asking if that like 50% of ARV, 60% of ARV is for a cash offer. Yeah, that's a cash offer price. So if you're able to, like, if they're open to create a finance type of deal where you could potentially buy it with seller financing or subject to the existing mortgage, or doing a lease option, like that's another pitch too. You could say, okay, this is the cash offer price, but if you're flexible on how you get paid, I could potentially pay, a lot more, right? So the less money you have to come out of pocket to acquire the property, the more you could pay for it, right? And so that's a pitch that we have started to make more of, but I think over the next probably 6 months, we'll probably see more of these deals that end up being creative finance deals because the sellers aren't flexible on price, but they still need to move. So, let's see here. I'm just looking at, well, Natalie got in to the Zoom call. Where are you at? All right, cool. Any other questions on Zoom? Okay, Eton had a question here about subject to. So subject to is basically where you purchase the property and you leave the existing financing in place, and then you make the payments on behalf of the seller. So basically, like in Oklahoma, where I've done a number of these in Oklahoma because the cash flow there is a lot better, and so the numbers there just work a whole lot easier than they do here. But basically, they didn't have a ton of equity in the house. They needed to sell. They were there was in an Air Force town. They were getting stationed at a different base, and so they just needed the property gone. So I asked them if they'd be willing to sell it for what they owed on it, and they said yes. And so I kind of walked them through the process of how that would work. And because they didn't have any other options, they were open to it. So basically, their name stays on the mortgage because it can't get. In most cases, it can't get transferred, but the title transfers over to the new buyer. So in this case, it was me. So basically, I acquired a property by just paying the closing costs on it, and then I assumed the underlying mortgage. So I just picked up the payments on that, and then I turned around and there's a few different exit strategies that you can do with subject to. So you could just keep it as a regular rental. You could sell it with a lease option, so you get a lease option fee up front, and then it becomes a rental until the person is ready to buy it. Or you can even resell it on owner financing, where you're basically creating a new loan and wrapping the original loan around it. So there's definitely pros and cons to this deal structure. The huge pro is that you could buy a property with like very, very little money out of pocket, and you don't have to go get a loan from a bank because there's already a mortgage in place. The con is like, it's a huge pain in the ass dealing with insurance, and you're basically tied to the property seller for a long, long time, because as long as that mortgage is in place, you might still need to interact with that lender on their behalf, and they might have questions, or there could be an insurance claim and they have to stay on the insurance. So there's some things to definitely watch out for. So as a wholesaler, how do you assign a subject to a buyer? So it's pretty much just like any other deal. So like, let's say you get something under contract. Let's say the seller's like, yeah, I'm willing to sell this. You can take over my payments and I just need this thing gone. So as a wholesaler, what you could do is you could say, okay, let's say, just for the sake of argument, the seller doesn't need or want any money up front. So you're basically just taking over the mortgage payments. So what you could do is you could put this out there to your buyers list and say, okay, subject to deal, I got here, purchase price 200,000, mortgage balance 200,000. Let's say there's no equity in it. And it's going to be a 20K down payment. So that 20K down payment is basically your assignment fee in that case. And so you would assign it to them for the 20K, and then they would be the ones to take over the paperwork in the mortgage. I would only sell a subject to deal. I would only wholesale a subject to deal to somebody I really trusted, because you're basically building rapport with that seller, and they're going to have to be comfortable enough with the fact that their mortgage is going to stay out there and somebody else is going to be paying for it. So the fact that you're building that rapport with them, but then you're turning around and selling the contract to somebody else who is, if you don't know, whether or not, they have the means to be able to continue paying the mortgage if like their tenants stop paying, then I personally would be not comfortable doing it. Plus, if it's a sub 2 deal and it's very little money out of pocket, like I'd probably will have to keep that for myself, But I mean, it could be, an example where, you might want to wholesale something, or I would consider wholesaling something if they're in pre-foreclosure and they have 50K in past due payments and penalties and stuff like that. So you'd have to bring in 50K just to bring the loan current. I'd either look at bringing a capital partner on or say, okay, yeah, I don't want to put this much money into it, so I'll just, wholesale it. So subject to typically between just you and the seller. Yeah. So that's the way I've done it. I just work directly with the sellers and just bought their properties. One of them was through a wholesaler, actually. A wholesaler brought me a sub 2 deal that they didn't want to keep for themselves. So.
Now, Rob, if the seller down the line ends up filing for bankruptcy and they have this mortgage on their books, that means your property can get theoretically pulled, or does the title protect that, or does it follow the mortgage?
Yeah, no, title protects that. So they no longer own the property at that point, right?
Okay.
So they still have the debt tied to the property, but the property itself the title's been transferred either to a trust or to to whatever the buying entity was. So it wouldn't be subject to any sort of bankruptcy procedures at that point. But yeah, that's a good question, because yeah, there are some things you have to watch out for as far as the debt goes, because the lender could in theory call the note due.
Sure, due on sale.
Sale, right? So they sold the property, but that I feel like is like I was just at a meetup last weekend, and like people want to create a finance in sub 2, and everybody that I talked to is like so scared of the due on sale clause in the mortgages. Like in my experience and from what I've heard from Pace Morby and then Grant Kemp are two really, really big sub 2 guys, like due on sale clause like almost never ever happens. To me, like there's a lot scarier things that can go wrong with the sub 2 deal than due on sale. So I think people kind of focus, it sounds scary, but the probability that something like that happens is pretty small. Yo, Marcos, what's up? How's business been? So, all right. We got any other questions here on Zoom or on Facebook? Kind of past the hour mark. I'm gonna try to do this every Wednesday at 11. So even if something comes up in the meantime, feel free to DM me. Best way to comp in rural areas. Man, that's tough. I hate rural areas. So you can do a few different things. You have to either go further back in time, or you kind of got to expand the property size, or what's the other thing you could do? I guess you got to kind of widen your criteria. or expand the distance from the subject property, right? But yeah, I actually try to avoid rural properties just for that reason, especially right now. They're just like super hard to sell. So unless it's like an obvious screaming deal, you know, and the sellers are super motivated, then I typically will not want to, you know, get too much into those. So Marcus asking if I got any sub 2 deals. I don't have any like available that I'm looking to assign right now. I own a few, but I want to get some more. So if you've got any, I'd be more than happy to take a look. So DBAs. So Kathy has a question about DBAs. Wondering about DBA, just setting up my LLC and spoke with Prime. I thought most folks use DBAs and love to hear pros and cons. Yeah, your LLC does not have to have any reflection on what you brand yourself as. Like what you put yourself out there as and your marketing and everything like that can be completely separate from whatever your LLC name is. So for example, like everything that we have that goes out is, you know, Snap Offer Property Solutions. But you know, the underlying LLC name is actually like Click Labs LLC. So yeah, you can name your LLC whatever it is that you want, and your branding and marketing can be something completely different. So I wouldn't sweat it too much. For liability reasons, is it better to have a DBA? I think a DBA is necessary, and let me put a disclaimer that I'm not an accountant or a lawyer in this, but I think a DBA might be more necessary if you are actually planning on like collecting checks and payments as some name other than your LLC. There could be some liability component there as well that I'm not aware of. But I think Prime should be able to clarify that if you need a DBA, or if it would be better to have one for liability reasons. No problem. So Natalie, did you have a question? Or did you want me to send you just a message offline or DM you? Let me just send you my email address and we can connect offline. Oh, you got a sub 2 deal, Marcus. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I would love to take a look at that. All right, cool. Any other questions? If not, I'm gonna go get some lunch. But yeah, these were all really good questions. I'm super excited that everybody came and participated. Okay. Oh, Jason says I found the deal Dan sent for me is not a deal. Okay, yeah, that happens all the time. Once we start digging into numbers, like things, I always get super excited when I get something in my inbox, and then I'll start peeling back the layers and be like, oh man, this actually isn't a deal after all. But that's okay. That's part of it. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ann. I'll catch you next week. If you got any questions or want me to like take a look at a deal or help you run numbers on something, just DM me on Instagram or Facebook, and we'll see if we can put something together. So cool. All right, guys, take care. Have a good day.